Welcome to the Quentin podcast, a show about elevating everything. I'm Quentin Hafner, and I'm obsessed with helping people live great lives. On this show, we talk about what it really takes to live an elevated life, vision, mindset, purpose, values, leadership, and rising above mediocrity. All the inner and outer work required to build massive success and meaningful significance. Let's get into it. Okay, everybody, welcome to the podcast. And today we are going to have a conversation about why high achievers or high performers, why they fail at marriage, and 3 things that they need to do different to change it. Okay, so in our group, we love talking about leadership, high performance, success principles, because this really speaks to the heart of so many people that we work with. And what we've learned is that the things that make high performers so good in their work environment are also the same things that make them unsuccessful in their personal lives, their marriages, their home life. So we're going to talk about that in this episode, and we're going to give you some really actionable things that you can take away, some things that you can think about, do different, so you're just as successful in your home life as you are in your work life. So when guys and gals, but this conversation is going to be specifically framed up towards the men, when high performing men are not winning at home, it brings up this big giant confusion. And the confusion is, okay, well, I'm capable at work, I'm disciplined at work, people like me at work, I'm driven at work, I lead teams at work. But why is all of that stuff that I'm so good at in this domain of my life not translating, and it's not applicable to the things that are going on at home? So we're going to tell you the big 3 reasons why that happens and what you can actually do to change it. So, hey, Lucas, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, good to be here. Looking forward to having this conversation, Quentin. I think it's super relevant for especially men to be successful in their marriage. So let's dive in.
Okay, so yeah, let's dive in. So the reason, let's just kind of jump in to the reason this happens. And so if you are thinking about your life as a pie chart, just to simplify it, we think about if I know there's more domains in your life than just 2, but if we were going to just super simplify it, we think about your work life and your personal life. And so we have a pie chart, it's split down the middle, and there's your work life and your personal life. So what we have come to learn in our work with high performing people is that the things that they apply for success in their work life, they also try to apply in their personal life, and they don't get the same result. Now, this leaves a lot of guys scratching their head. They're thinking, why is this happening? I'm so successful doing this over here, but it's not working over here. I'm using all of my strategy, all of my logic, all of my cognitive capabilities, all of my rationale, and it's just not hitting the same. And so what we want you to know, listening to this podcast right now, is that the playbook that you have for work, the thing that makes you so successful at work, using that playbook applied to your marriage, it's guaranteed to fail. So the playbook that works so well in one domain of your life, not only will it not work in this other part of your life, but it'll be a direct antagonist in this part of your life. So it's not just to say, well, if you try it, it won't work. It's like, if you try it, it will become the poison pill for this part of your life. So what we've learned is that guys have this playbook for success, and gals, they have this playbook for success, and it says, hey, this works really well, and I'm going to put it over here, and they put it over here, and it just doesn't work. So how we love to coach people is we love to give them a new operating system for their personal lives. Say, hey, the operating system that you use at work, keep it, keep doing it, keep using it. It works really good. You have all the results to show that, but you need a new operating system for your home life. You can't use the outdated one. You need the new one. You need a new playbook. And so this is kind of that podcast. We want to give you these three things that are going to be directly transferable and applicable to the new operating system. Does that speak to you a little bit, Lucas?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on. I love the language of having an old operating system, for the home life and the personal life. And one of my questions that's coming to mind for you, Quentin, is, why do you think that is? Why are guys having so much success when it comes to making money, building a business, maybe even leading their company, but when it comes to connecting with their wife, it's oil and water. What
Mm.
what what do you think is the real reason behind why that's happening? Maybe before we get into those three shifts.
Okay, so the reason that happens is because, well, let's do this, Lucas, because I think this directly ties into the shift number one. This will be actually a really great segue, and then we can kind of get into all
Perfect.
three of them in more detail. But just to answer your question, which applies to the big reason number one, is that high performers try to solve relationship problems with more high performance or more high performance principles. And so just to answer your question directly, the reason it's oil and water is because all relationship problems at the end of the day are emotional problems, and all of the high performance problems, 95% of them that people apply at work, are rational, logical, and cognitive problems. And guys try to take that same rationale, logic, and cognition and apply it to an emotional component of their life, and that's the oil and water. So it's like they do more of the thing that maybe that works good at work. They keep trying harder. They keep you know showing up in certain ways, but they're missing this really critical principle that the reason that the relationship isn't working is only an emotional reason, and a it's not a thing where you can apply logic, pressure, and fixing, which you would do at work, which actually works so well. Am I explaining that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think of all these conversations, you have and I'm having on a daily basis. And, guys always like to rebuttal, well, I'm logical, I'm rational. That's just how I am. Why can't my wife get that? But I think you make such a really powerful point that, to be able to have a successful marriage, you have to become more emotionally attuned. And so I guess my follow-up question to that is, that's a big part of black belt husband is understanding, not only your male psychology but female psychology. So why is becoming so being a good emotional leader, why is that so important for the marriage?
Right. Yeah. Because, and this is something that very few guys are taught how to do. So if you're struggling in your relationship and you're thinking, man, like, okay, am I maybe I missed out on the recipe or whatever. It's like, well, you probably did, but just so you know, everybody did too. I did too until I figured it out, or until someone illuminated to me that's like, hey, your relationship cannot be fixed by doing more of the same thing that doesn't make it work. And this is where guys get stuck. It's like a lot of guys get stuck because they know their relationship isn't working, and they can tell that because there's so much disconnection happening. And then what they do is they try to apply more of the same thing that the other person doesn't want, because that's the only thing that they
Mm,
know how to give. So the analogy is like, if someone is really hungry, giving them more water isn't going to satiate their appetite. Even though
mm,
giving them water is not a bad thing, It's just not what they need. And so what they need is food. And it's like, do we know how to do that? So the parallel when it comes to relationships is okay, that is the the comparison between food and water is that there are certain nourishing things that the relationship needs that are going to be only emotional. And most guys, and when I say most guys, I'm saying like 95% of guys have never been trained on how to do that. How do we show up in a way that meets the emotional needs of this other person? How do we show up in a way that creates this emotional safety for this other person? And the other thing too, for anybody listening to this, because a lot of times this can sound like, okay, well, that sounds confusing. And okay, well, first of all, it's actually very easy to learn. You just have to have a commitment to wanting to learn it. But the other thing that's even more important than that is helping guys understand that when you learn this and you get this right, you are the big beneficiary. Like everything in your life is going to dramatically change for the better once we understand that we can't fix emotional problems with practical and rational solutions.
Such a huge takeaway. So I know we had a couple more shifts coming up. What is, diving into that a little further, becoming more emotional, maybe a little less practical. What is shift number two that guys need to make to be on this journey?
Okay, so shift number two that where high performers where they fail when it comes to the relationship, the way I like to say it is that they are horrible at filling their own cup.
Mm,
Okay, they're horrible at filling their own cup. And so what that means is that they spend so much of their time and energy and emotional bandwidth given to their occupational and world of high performance that when they come into that second half of the pie chart, when they come back into their personal life and their wife and kids need a lot from them from an emotional
mm,
standpoint, or even sometimes a practical standpoint, there's just nothing left. The cup has been drained. The cup is empty. There, it's like the metaphorical picture is like the guy that just comes home and he's like, look, I just want to sit on the couch, I want to turn on the TV, I just want to scroll on my phone. And the wife is like, hey, do you want to talk? And the guy's like, that's the last thing I want to do. And so what this connects back to is a more root level issue in that if high performing guys are if they give their all to their work life, and of course this can be a seasonality thing too, because there might be seasons of our work life where we do have to give our all and we don't have a lot of emotional bandwidth left over for much else. And that can be okay. But what we experience, and I know you see this too, is like it's not a seasonal thing. This is just life. And this has been life for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, where guys make such an emotional investment and commitment into their work life that they just don't have anything left. Not this is a key factor. It's not that you don't have anything left only for your spouse and for your kids. You don't have anything left for yourself. And so you become bitter, you become resentful, your nervous system is depleted, your energy is low, and everybody that really loves you and cares about you in your home life gets the breadcrumbs of your life. So we talk a lot about this in our high value leadership framework, where we talk about the concept of self leadership and leading yourself first, that it's not a selfish thing. And in fact, it's the opposite of selfish. To not do this is the most selfish thing, because to not take good care of yourself ends up robbing the people that care about you of what they need, which ends up killing the same thing that you need. And it's just a cascading effect of problems that are the fallout when people stop taking care of themselves. So that's big reason number two.
mm.
Does that speak to you? Let me you see this a lot too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. And I wanted to follow up with another question. And even if there's, because I think a lot of responses I get, sometimes are like, well, what does that even mean? Like, what does it even mean to fill your cup? In case there's any, guys listening who are maybe just wondering what that looks like. Do you have any practical examples, maybe from your own life, or just like, what does it mean for a high performing man to fill their own cup on a,
Great question. Great
day to day
question.
basis, weekly, like, but yeah, what does that look like for on your schedule? Like,
Yeah, such a great question. It reminded me of a new client that I met with on a Zoom call yesterday. And this guy was so great because he was so honest with me. He was so honest with me about what's going on in his life. And he was like, he's like, hey man, just to be totally honest with you, this is where I'm at. He's like, I have no friends. I have no hobbies. I'm totally disconnected from my relationship with God and my marriage is falling apart. And I was like, wow. I was like, dude, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being so honest. He's like, the only thing that's really working in my life is my business. I was like, okay.
mm-hmm,
And I was like, well, I was like, okay.
mm-hmm,
And I told him, I said, okay, well, in order for your there's so many dots to connect and what he said, but one dot is in order for your marriage to ever be successful, you got to have friends and you got to have hobbies. This is kind of like filling your own cup. And I also
mm-hmm,
told him, I said, you've been lucky that your business is so successful because with so much of your life out of balance, it's kind of astonishing that your business has been successful because what's likely to happen over time is those three things become the poison pill that will eventually
mm-hmm,
leak into your business and start impacting how much money you make. But he wasn't there yet. Business was great. I said, okay, cool. So when it comes to filling your own cup, I think about, what does it look like for you to take really good care of yourself physically?
mm-hmm,
It sounds so trivial and mundane, but you would be, I mean, you're not surprised, but maybe some of our listeners are surprised at
mm-hmm,
how people, just say, I don't even have time to go to the gym. It's like, well, dude, you have to make time to do that. Well, and then it's like, well, what about, so that's your physical life. Well, what about your spiritual life? Do you have time to meditate? Do you have time to pray? What does your relationship with God look like? What about friends? What does it look like for you to hang out with people and laugh and have joy and joke around? I love asking people, it's like, when's the last time you really laughed super hard? When I ask that question to most people, they look at me crazy, like, I don't really remember. It's like, well, I want you to experience that every week, and then, what does your mental health look like? What does your mindset look like? These are all self-care ideas too. Like, what are you doing to take really good care of that? Do you have a really exciting vision for your future? What does your unique mission look like in the world? And these are all kind of purpose kind of stuff and getting at our why. So this is all the self-care stuff. Okay. And I personally don't love the word self-care because it feels way too much like a therapeutic word. But the thing that I like to say is like self-prioritization. What does it look like for you to really prioritize yourself? Because what happens is when we prioritize ourselves, we feel really good about life. And when we feel really good about life, not only are we going to perform at a much higher level in our work life, but when we get home, we're like happy to be around. We're happy to be around. One of the things I like to say to people that are on the edge of getting a divorce, I say, okay, cool. Like, if you want to get a divorce, that's totally your business. I'm not going to judge that. But I say, do this. Before you decide to get a divorce, let's look at these categories of your life: your physical health, your mental health, your mindset, your spiritual health, your purpose, your friends, your community. Let's look at these other categories of your life. Let's get these other categories of your life to an 8 or a 9 because right now they're like 4s and 5s. Let's get these other categories of your life to 8s and 9s. And if when you get these categories of your life to 8s and 9s, if you still want to end your marriage, okay, cool. Makes all the sense in the world. But what I've experienced and what I know you have too is that when people are really struggling in their relationship, it's almost a 100% correlation that these other domains, these self prioritization domains, are also really struggling. And so it's like, hey guys, don't make any big decisions about your relationship until you get this stuff super dialed in. Because what will happen, you might make that big decision about your relationship, and then you realize that that wasn't really the problem. And we've seen that movie 1,000 times too, where they're like, oh crap, all these problems still exist in my life, and I created a different problem by ending my relationship, and that relationship at the end of the day wasn't really the real thing. You kind of tracking
Yeah,
with that?
totally. I think, those are some great examples. And I think being able to connect the self prioritizing yourself, or I like the term fill your cup, it's not so therapeutic like you use, but to really feeding into your marriage, and recognizing that the marriage isn't always the problem. It's what's going on inside you. And if you start taking these simple steps to take care of yourself, you're actually going to become a different person, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And if we were going to just say it super simply, it's like, hey guys, listen, it's like, wake the fuck up, right? You
Mhm.
can't go and just trash yourself at your job, come home with nothing left and expect to have a good marriage, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's not a crazy thing, but it's astonishing how many guys are approaching their personal lives and their marital lives that way. So we just can't do that. Yeah, of course, you can do that, but then you're going to reap what you sow, and what you're going to reap is having a really dysfunctional relationship that's going to be very painful. So we don't want to do that.
Don't want that. Which I think is probably a good segue for reason number three. Why why high performers often fail at marriages.
Okay, and this
What
one
do you
this one's
have?
specifically to men. Okay, this is
Yeah.
specifically to men because if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that one of my core convictions is that high performers fail in marriages because guys stop leading at home.
Mm.
And my core belief is that a marriage can only thrive when the man assumes that leadership responsibility. And why I think that, that's a different episode. And we'll talk more about that as time goes on. But guys are great typically at leading at home, at leading at work, excuse me. A lot of guys love to, manage teams, lead big groups of people. A lot of my clients are business owners with lots of employees. They love leadership principles. They read leadership journals. And then I say, well, what does it look like for you to lead at home? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And they've totally abdicated their leadership responsibility at home. And what you've probably heard us talk about a lot on this show is that I've never met a woman in my entire life, and I've been doing this for a really long time. I've had thousands of clients over the years. I've never met a woman who said, I want to be the leader of our marriage. Every woman I've ever met wants their man to step up as the leader of their family, of their marriage. But most guys have totally abdicated that role and responsibility to their wife. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons why, and there's sociological reasons, there's cultural reasons, there's political reasons, and then there's personal reasons within the guy himself. And then it creates this like really icky, dynamic in the relationship where the wife feels like she has to lead, but she resents him, and then he resents her for being bossy, and it's the whole thing just starts to break down. Okay. But when we think about the concept of leadership and we apply it to work, it's like our leadership definition inside our group is very simple. What we mean by being a leader is that great leaders bring out the best in other people. Okay, great leaders bring out the best in other people. So when we talk about leadership, we're not talking about being your wife's manager, your wife's boss. You're not a control freak. You're not the authoritarian of the family. It just means that you are going to take on the responsibility of bringing out the best in other people. And a lot of guys have totally backed away from that position. They do it at work, great. And that results in lots of rewards from a success standpoint and from a performance standpoint. But at home, they avoid hard conversations. They avoid tension. They have outsourced or abdicated their leadership. They're super tolerant of stuff that they should have better boundaries around. They have, they're tolerant of chaos, and so their relationship falls apart. And they're kind of like, well, what happened? Okay, well, what happened was that you stopped leading. So we have to return to leadership. Now, a lot of guys get afraid of that because they're kind of like, well, it sounds nice, but like maybe my wife's not going to go for it. And because, again, we have to redefine what leadership means and how this actually applies. But guys have given up their leadership responsibility inside their home. And that's the third reason why the marriage is going to break down.
I know it can be hard for guys to hear that, but I really want to encourage everyone lean into what Quentin's saying here and what we're talking about because this is major. It's a major part of the higher value man system, a major part of the black belt husband system. And if you really want to reclaim your marriage, then this is where it starts. I was going to ask you, Quentin. I know you have some really deep convictions, and I always love hearing you talk about this. But what do you say are like? What would you say are your top three core convictions when it comes to healthy masculine leadership in the home?
Okay, so core convictions on healthy leadership in the home. Number one core conviction is take full responsibility.
Mm,
Okay, take full
mm,
responsibility for the success or for the failure of whatever is going on. Okay, so you are fully responsible. And I know you're asking me for what are the top three, Lucas, but let me just end it with the top one. Okay,
yeah, let's do it.
because it's really just that one thing. If guys, I mean, there's nuance to what we're talking about, but if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, what does it mean to be a great leader? Well, let's just start there. Great leaders take full responsibility. So if the thing is not working, we don't blame other people. We don't say, oh, what about your part and what about what you did? Imagine the CEO of a company that is failing, and he's going to say, "Oh, well, the person over in accounting, it's like, no, nobody cares. Everyone's looking at you. You're responsible." And the beautiful thing about responsibility is that when I own that everything is my responsibility, I also own that I am the solution to everything. It is the most
Mm,
beautiful and empowering position that we can ever be in. So instead of thinking about it like, oh, I don't want to take responsibility, it's like, no, you get to take responsibility and then also you get to be the one that is empowered to be the solution of change. I don't want to give the keys to my life to anybody else. That's one of Quentin Hafner's, you know, core principles. Nobody gets to drive my life. I drive my life. I have the keys. And part of me being able to drive my life and have the keys is by taking full responsibility for everything because I'm also empowered to be the solution to everything.
oh, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. I think that really sums it up and really speaks to the heart of not only this episode, but really the work that we do with high performing men, and really one of the biggest changes we can help you make if this is speaking to you.
hmm Yeah, and maybe this is a good way to kind of land the plane in the show, and I think the big takeaway in this, and you're feel free to add any thoughts you want to add here, Lucas, too, is that like, the big takeaway is really understanding that guys are so good at applying these principles in a certain part of their life. Whether it's leadership or performance principles or, any of these things that we're talking about. But then in that second half of the pie chart, they let things fall through the cracks. They allow
Mm,
things to fall through the cracks that they would never allow in their work life. And then they're kind of like puzzled and bewildered as to why their marriage isn't giving them the thing that they want, which is peace and joy and confidence and lots of sex and lots of happiness and
mm,
lots of passion. Well, it's because you're so good at it, but you just aren't applying it to your personal life. And so that's the trap of high performance.
mm.
Is there anything you want to add to that before we, you know, take us home?
I just want to say if there's any guys listening to this and this is speaking to you and maybe you know your ears are perking up and you're kind of going like, oh, like I don't know if that's me, maybe that's me, like there's no shame, there's no blame, there's no judgment. We'd love to talk to you. Send us a message. We're here to help. We do this all day, every day, and yeah, we're here to connect if you need us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. A great call to action. Second that, we're here. Feel free to reach out. And then, okay. Thanks for listening. Until next time, chat
All
soon.
right, guys, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Quentin Hafner podcast. If this helped you live or lead a little higher, share it forward. And remember, true elevation starts within. See you next time.